Welcome to Goldfish on Games and Cover Disc Face Off, where in November of 1994 we are seeing a bit of a return of the PD games, and provider of the fireworks are Amiga CD32 Gamer, Amiga Action and Amiga Power. Fight! Starting with Amiga Action, that even in this late date managed to find enough content to put out 3 discs that had 2 demos and 4 PD titles. And we start with Valhalla and the Lords of Infinity, or as it was known for this demo, the Lords of Action. This is an adventure game with this top-down view, but that wasn't the big thing with this game. No, it was the fact that this was the Amiga's first talkie game.
These are cold.
Every action and interaction has a bit of speech to go along with it.
It's a chicken leg.
And yes, that can slow things down slightly when trying to play from disc.
It's a faucet.
But it does work quite well, even though I might wish there was subtitles in a few places. Moving around the level is relatively simple, but be careful, as some of those tiles, well, they're actually trapdoors. You can tell them apart if you look very closely. And as you go around, you'll also find various members of Amiga Action, and you get to talk to them.
Steve McNally.
I curse you!
Incredible!
But the real core of the game is to go around picking up items, and then finding the right place to use them, which can take much trial and error, and lots of exploring.
It's a record.
But because everything's done with the joystick, it's actually quite simple to control,
I got it.
as you'll just move him around directly, and then you can just press the fire button to bring up this basic menu where you can look at the items, look at stuff in the world, and you can interact with them. This is also repeated for your inventory.
I got it.
I do enjoy a customized demo, and this one gives you a lot
It's
to
a
explore. It's actually quite a large demo, and I barely scratched the surface of it, as I didn't even manage to make it out of this first room. I'm sure I'm close to working
It's
it
a
out,
match.
but something is just out of reach here.
I got it.
And moving on, we find our first shareware game, as it's Wire Chaos. That after a slightly confusing main menu that gives you lots of options, it opens itself up to be a multiplayer light cycle game. A genre that we've gotten to see quite a lot of games over the years on these cover discs. But these were obviously quite popular with both the developers and the magazine editors. And it's not difficult to see why, because if you do have some mates around, they are a lot of fun. But this one, well, it's hard to show off as there's no computer-controlled opponents, which is made even more difficult by some of the maps as there's a wall that you have to dodge right away. Overall, it seems like a decent take on this type of game, but it's not one I'm going to return to, at least solo anytime soon. Our next demo is for Kids Chaos. Now, it's not the first time we've seen this game, as we got to see it way back when it was known as Kid Vicious. It also showed up in a video of Sonic-like games for the Amiga, and for very obvious reasons, as this is what you'd get if you mix Sonic with a collect 'em up. And in this world, the Toy Factory, we have to destroy a set number of lights. Why lights? Why not? It's not just the speed, or the jump pads, or even the checkpoint poles that they borrowed from the Blue Blur, but there's also pipes, as that was the thing that all platformers needed to have at this time. But it's not a complete clone, as it does have a few tricks of its own. The health system is quite unique, as it's always slowly regenerating, so hanging around will get you back in the fight again. But you are also timed, so you can't sit around too long. But you're gonna have to be very careful, as there's a damage multiplier that changes from level to level. But as this is a single map, you won't really see that. You also won't see too much of this one, as that multiplayer is actually set quite high, as it's one of the later worlds, and to top it all off, they give you a single life, so you better be good. I think they wanted to make this one level last as long as possible. Now this is a fun game that's got some nice touches, with it being from magnetic fields. The toy cars that we see racing around, yep, they look very similar to Lotus cars. And we round out Amiga Action with a collection of PD games from the Assassins that has a jolly nice sounding menu. And the first game is for Battleships, based on the hit movie that came out 15 years later. Wait, sorry, it's based on the hit board game that came out before it. That makes more sense. Thankfully, this gives us quite a few options, including a single player mode, where we get to go head to head with the mighty Amiga AI. And you start off being able to place your ships wherever you want, including rotating them around so they can be vertical and horizontal, and then you take turns with the other player to try and shoot at them. And if you get it right,
sank my battleship.
It's a decent enough take on the game, but I wish it was a little bit quicker in playing out the moves. The sound effects are all fine and everything, but it does take quite a while to play a complete game. And I do like how it has a mode where it's just you hunting the computer's battleships, so you don't have to do all the back and forth. Every PD game must include a fruit machine game, and here is this one, the big game. Put some coins in the machine, hit the gamble button, and if you're lucky, the reels will spin and you might win some money. Or you might even get some numbers and make those bars on the right go up. Or if you're unlucky, it might crash, and it has crashed on me a few times. I'm not sure how you can make a fruit machine game this broken. But when it does work, you can gamble away all of your money. And thankfully, it's not real money, so you don't lose anything. But it also means that if you do happen to win, which doesn't happen all that often, you don't win anything either. So really, you just have to rely on the fact that the main board and the mini games are fun. And this one, well, it's feeling a little bit basic on the main board, and while there are a few mini games, I didn't manage to record any of them. So it did manage to recreate the fruit machine standards of just trying to suck all your money, even if it was pretend money, and even that wasn't all that amazing, as for some reason it was this shooting gallery, which really didn't fit in with the rest of the game. So it doesn't really save it. The last game is Hydrozone, that attempts to recreate what it's like to be at a club in the 90s. And it turns out that when we get into the game proper, it's a 3D into the screen style racing game. Well, I say racing, it's mostly about avoiding the sides in this tunnel section, and then in the second bit, you then have to avoid the blocks that are rushing towards you. It runs quite nicely on this A1200, and it looks quite cool with various things going on in the backgrounds. But after what feels like an age, you'll end up at a boss fight. Which at first I thought you had to headbutt it, but no, turns out that's not the answer. Instead, you have to shoot it. And amazingly, through this whole thing, we actually had the ability to shoot. But this is the only time it's actually useful. And when you finally take it out, then you can move on to the next section, which is avoiding more walls. And then eventually, you get to move on to the next level. But every so often, you will get something a bit more unique, like having to take out these targets, or having a full 3D style breakout game that I'll have to say it was very difficult to complete. And this is basically the core of each level, You do the tunnel section, then avoid the walls and blocks, followed up by some boss, and then onto another avoid the wall area. It's not a bad game, and it even gives you a few chances to get your health back. I'm not sure there's enough there to make me want to return to it. Our second magazine of the month is CD32 Gamer, that as normal comes with a single CD that's half full at most. But it does have a brand new menu, which seems to be simpler than what we've seen before, but that might be because there's much less games than previous months. But they have put up some nice images of each of the titles, and the first one is for Bubble and Squeak, which is a platform game that has a companion animal. And we play as, I guess, Bobble, the kid, and we get to walk around throwing stars. But as you get further, you'll have to get Squeak to follow you. And you can tell them to either wait or follow. And when tagging along, they'll even jump in set areas. Not everywhere, which can make it a bit annoying when you might think they can jump up to somewhere but they can't. And other times they'll just jump badly and miss a platform that you're hoping that they would make. One of the other ways you get Squeak around the map is by kicking them. Now, I don't recommend doing this with the family pet, but here they do roll into a ball and can go around ramps and even knock things over. The coins that the enemies drops are also quite useful, as if you collect enough of them you can get some gum and then you can feed it to Squeak and then ride around on their back. Again, I don't recommend feeding bubblegum to the family pet and trying to ride its back. But this will allow you to fire bubbles at the enemies, and it will also allow you to jump together, which allows you to complete some of the platforming bits you can't on your own. The main path through this level isn't too long, but there's this huge area to the side with lots of bonus points. And with the power of the CD32, we get more than just a single level, which is quite nice, as they even show off some of the other zones in the game. So you get a really good idea of what the final title is going to be like. It is a fun platformer, and one that I've always enjoyed. And we move on to my absolute favourite genre. It's a football game, as we have Wembley International Soccer. I think this might be a game that we've also seen before, but this has a far more complete looking menu, even if most of the options don't work. And at first I didn't think the controls worked, as it seemed to be just playing itself, which isn't the worst thing in the world for me. But it turned out you can switch between computer and player managing the team, but it's just not very clear that you can do that, because everything else gets some nice straightforward buttons apart from this. Now, possibly the fanciest thing in this game is the fact that you can switch the view, so it can either be top down or side on. The choice is yours. And that's pretty much all I can say about this game. I don't have anything else. So let's move on to the next title, which is Rise of the Robots. Wait, Wembley Soccer, all is forgiven. Sigh. Well, this is mostly the same demo that we got to see a while back, when it was just a single floppy disk. But now, the FMV quality is much higher, but it hasn't changed the gameplay quality in any way whatsoever. Now this is a 2-player demo, so you don't even get a chance to play against the super advanced AI that they were boasting at the time, and you also don't get to hear that Brian May soundtrack. Now what is both maybe not too surprising, but surprising at the same time, is the fact that this is a direct port of the Amiga version, and as such it uses a single button. That also means that we have the attack bar that fills up as you hold down the fire button, and that will control how hard you punch or kick. Where all the rest of the consoles got a slightly different game that used the extra buttons for the different strengths. Now this being a 2-player only demo, it's not particularly easy to show it off. But really, is there a good way to show this game off? I don't think so. So with that scathing and completely original commentary on Rise of the Robots done, let's move on to the PD collection, which once again was provided by the Multimedia Machine. And while it does look like there's quite a few games, the list does repeat. But we'll still have to take a random selection as there are a lot of them. So let's start with Jar. That looks like a 3D Pac-Man. Or would that be more of a take on Crystal Castles? But either way, you have to go around collecting the pills. All in this 3D isometric view that has multiple layers and hidden paths. And those baddies, they do not pull any punches, as they will very quickly get you if they have the chance. There also seems to be this tree that's going around eating the pills as well. Not sure what that's all about. Normally pressing the fire button will make you jump, but there's a gun that you can find that will help level the playing field, if slightly, because if you lose, you do not get another one. And the baddies, well, they obviously respawn. Now there are ladders that you can use to quickly make it up to some of the higher areas, but don't think you can use them to get down, and a large fall will kill you. Now overall, this one isn't for me. I tried to have fun with it, and occasionally I did, but overall I found it more annoying than enjoyable. But I can imagine for the right type of person this would be a lot of fun. Next up is Entity. Now this is a bit of an odd one that I actually quite liked.
3, 2, 1.
As you control this set of crosshairs, that when you move you pull along this tail that looks like the villain from Quicks. But this is actually your main weapon against the blob-like things. And the way it moves is a little odd and not fully predictable, but you do get a feel for it after a while. So you have to try and sweep that beam, or the sticks as it's called, across the entities to destroy them. But be careful, as if they touch the edges, they can become more deadly, and if you touch them, then you'll lose health and your bonus. I had a lot of fun playing this one, even if it did feel a little bit random on when you lose health and lives. And if you happen to do well while playing it from the CD, well, it has a habit of crashing as it tries to save the game and it fails to do so. That was quite annoying. But overall, this was such a lovely little game and quite unique. And it was like nothing I'd played before. Now I'm sure someone in the comments is going to tell me that it was based on such and such a game, and at that point I'll probably have to give that one a go as well. Also included on the CD is a video of an advert of the CD32. Not entirely sure why this is needed, as you already own the machine,
Anything I'd ever thought possible.
but it did have a series of animated videos that you could watch instead. But one of the shareware games that really caught my eye was Starbase 13, which was a point-and-click adventure, which wasn't the subject that most PD developers would go for, due to how much work they normally take to make. But this one seems to be really nicely done. Now I've not managed to get too far into it, as I managed to die. It seems you have to be really quick with a gun at one section, but I'm now thinking about giving this a proper go, and seeing what it's actually like, as I think there could be a fun little title in this one. And it's time to move on to the final magazine, Amiga Power, with 2 discs, 2 demos, and a single PD game. And it starts off with a cracker, Pinball Illusions. That starts off telling us about the 4 tables the game will come with, even though eventually we would only get 3 of them. But this does at least give us one of the better tables in the game, Law and Justice. And as with the previous pinball demos, here we get unlimited balls, but just 5 minutes to play with them. So rack up those points any way you can. From the skill shots, or hitting the ramps, or the bumpers, where I actually managed to get stuck for a little while. But there's also the mini games, which are mostly about hitting targets or ramps, but sometimes they get a little bit more complex, like having to hit the targets to collect criminals, then having to go down one of the lanes to send them to jail. And all this is relayed via some very nicely done dot matrix animations at the top of the screen. Also, if you're very good, there's multi-ball, which was the big addition to this version of pinball. And in the full game, it would auto switch to the high resolution mode, which it doesn't seem to do here. Instead, it will just track the lowest ball on the table, and it seems to work out nicely enough. Now this is a lovely looking game, which isn't surprising as this was an AGA only title. And when the time finally runs out, you'll get to see that high resolution mode in action. The second disc has possibly the most seen game in this series. It's Sensible World of Soccer. But this time it's the Scottish League. And it's very much like the demos that we've seen previously. We can play friendlies or the demo league, with the team being set for us already. It's the classic top-down football game that was one of the biggest on the machine. But it's also a game that I've never been good at. And it's one that we've seen in one form or another at least 4 or 5 times now. So to try and make it a bit more interesting, and to keep with the Scottish League, I've invited the Angry Scots from Worms to help me out with this bit.
Leave us alone, will ya?
Come on, you were the one that asked to join in with this episode.
Pants! You traitor!
So what do you think of my attempts so far at playing?
Are you still playing?
Come on, it's not that bad.
This is pure crap, by the way.
It's not like I've ever been that good at the game.
Come on, you waste of time.
Well, I blame you, Angry Scots Worm, for putting me off.
Flag it!
Yeah, you better run.
I'm gonna get you.
Well, let's move on to the final PD game of the magazine and the episode, Suicide Machine. Possibly not the best name for a game, but it does set you up for what you're going to find, as this is a very nicely drawn game full of cute creatures, and they are creatures that have various weapons and will try to attack you, so you have to shoot them back. There seems to be a few items that are dropped and powers that you can get, but you should be very careful as you can quite quickly run out of ammo. And you need at least some ammo to be able to collect more power-ups. So you can't just hold down the fire button. Overall, it looks fine, but there really isn't much to the gameplay. I feel that this was more an artist trying to show off than a programmer or a designer, and it feels like a bit of an odd one to include on the magazine. And there we have it. A slightly quieter month, I think, considering that this is the run-up to the holidays. But let's find out where those magazines stand. And in last place, well, it was a bit of a tough call, but I think I have to give it to Amiga Power. Pinball Illusions is an amazing demo, but it does only give you 5 minutes of joy at a time. In second place, I've given it to Amiga Action. That custom Valhalla almost pulled this into first place, but instead I had to give it to CD32 Gamer. Not for its demos, even though I did enjoy Bobble and Squeak, no, because its PD and shareware selection was by far the best, and it really won me over. I think I can already hear the comments being typed. So before I go, all I can say is thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again soon. As I've been the Goldfish, that was an extremely hard choice to make, and this was Goldfish on Games. As always, thanks for watching me check out these old magazines. I have so much fun doing these, that we're heading into our 3rd year of the series. So if you enjoyed this one, then you might want to try checking out some of the others, or even using those buttons under the video to let YouTube know that you did so.